Rant at the United Nations General Assembly. He spoke of Kashmir. He spoke of terrorist Burhani Wani, an armed terrorist of the Hizbul Mujahideen, and he called him a young Kashmiri leader. Goes on to show what terrorists are for Pakistan. But that's not all. A country that's committed gross human rights violations in Baluchistan, in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, in different other parts of Pakistan, including Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Let's listen into what Nawaz Sharif had to say about human rights violations, alleged human rights violations in Kashmir.
This indigenous uprising of the Kashmiris have been met as usual with brutal repression by India's occupation force of over 500,000 soldiers. Over 100 Kashmiris have been killed, hundreds, including children and infants, blinded by shotgun pellets, and over 6,000 unarmed civilians injured over the past 2 months. These Indian brutalities are well documented. I would like to inform the General Assembly that Pakistan will share with the Secretary General a dossier containing detailed information and evidence of the gross and systematic violations of human rights committed by Indian forces in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. These brutalities will not suppress the spirit of the Kashmiris. It will only intensify their anger and fortify their determination to see India end its occupation of Kashmir.
India Today's Prerna Desai Thakur now joins us live from New York. I quickly want to cut across and listen into Prerna, your take on what Nawaz Sharif said, and is he isolated? The way he's been getting a dressing down from everyone he speaks to about Kashmir, how is Pakistan camp reacting?
Well, Gaurav, as expected, he has reinforced the deadlock that exists at this point in time, calling for Kashmir as being the central point to getting on the negotiation table, while India says that terrorism is, what is the breaking point for India. And clearly one fades off the other, and that issue was not addressed in this talk. The other thing is he spent about 80% of his talk on India when it was Pakistan's UNGA address, and clearly points to the fact that Pakistan is feeling itself cornered right now, with 2 US legislators just yesterday bringing out a legislation to term Pakistan as a terrorist state. Other than that, there have been statements from President Barack Obama about the proxy war that is being waged from from Pakistan's soil. There are many statements that are coming out here in New York that could have cornered Pakistan, and I think that is what the strategy was, to put the blame on India at this point, to say that Pakistan is only a retaliatory force here in some way, and bringing up Kashmir's right of self-determination and not addressing the Baloch issue, which is inside Pakistan, is also one of the double speaks that happened today.
Oh, absolutely. And the number of Baloch nationalists who are protesting outside the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Prerna, stay on with me. General Qadian, your take. The way Pakistan Army commits massacres in Baluchistan, uses F-16 aircraft in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and heavy artillery, and in India, the use of pellet guns against a murderous mob, he calls that a human rights violation.
Well, Nawaz Sharif, coming back to his speech for half a minute, he did not come out as a leader who is assertive and confident. He came out as a very low official who is reading out a script given to him. Some of it may have been cut and paste from his past speeches to the United Nations General Assembly. Obviously, there are human rights violations. When Bhukti says he wants asylum in India, Musharraf yesterday in an interview said he is a terrorist, must not be given asylum.
Yes.
Because he is fighting for freedom. I asked him a question, what would you call the Hurriyat leaders then? Would you also call them terrorists or no? Because they are also fighting for freedom. Pakistan, the language is a double-speak. But I was going to make another point, which the question put to Narasimha Rao was, whether will we ever talk to Pakistan or no? I think in international relations, there cannot be black and white answers to every question. History is witness to it. Nobody during the 6 years of Second World War imagined that Germany and France will ever talk to each other again.
Yes.
But soon after the war, they not only talked to each other, they very amicably settled the ownership of Strasbourg, which is in the east of France.
But you know, Germany and France
So,
were not sending
we are
terrorists.
neighbors.
France
Those
wasn't
are-
sending terrorists into
No.
you know,
Just
that's a
one-
very important aspect. They wanted to be friends. We cannot
Gaurav-
be friends with Pakistan as long as
Gaurav,
Pakistan is sending terrorists into India. That's the basic red line. Ambassador
Gaurav,
Parthasarathy.
you are right. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Yes, sir.
Today we are not talking to them because they are sponsoring terrorism. Tomorrow, if that condition is met, they take tangible and credible steps to curb terrorism. I don't think we should have a problem in talking to them. We are neighbors, we can't change that fact.
Yes. Okay. Ambassador Parthasarathy, the way you look at Nawaz Sharif's address to the United Nations General Assembly, you agree with General Qadian, it wasn't like the head of a government, it wasn't a strong prime minister, it was some lowly babu who was just reading off some lines. You agree?
General, I wouldn't be surprised if in the morning, after all, he had to take Rahil Sharif's approval by calling him and speaking to him before he came here. I wouldn't be surprised if a large amount of that speech was written by somebody in GHQ. So, by one of Rahil Sharif's boys. The man is totally a prisoner of his armed forces as far as dealing with India or any foreign policy matter. He has serious differences with Rahil Sharif, which is being accentuated by who should be in charge of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. After all, the army would also like to make a bit of money and not leave it all for the politicians on the corridor. The fact of the matter is that he has no say in India on relations with India. So I think, and lastly, he is facing serious corruption charges because his 3 kids have bank accounts in Panama.
Yes. And perhaps that's why we see so much rhetoric.
I think the man is weak.
Yes, and that's why so much rhetoric on Kashmir.
And he's just recovering from heart surgery, for God's sake.
Okay.
So I think you should give him some latitude and all that, but he cut a pathetic figure, and the worst part of it is, even the Chinese did not back him on this one.
Yes, because it is very clear.
It was very clear. If you see the declaration of what happened in his meeting with the Chinese Prime Minister, nothing emerged. And I don't think India need to do anything. Between Afghanistan and Bangladesh, they will deal with Pakistan in SARC.
And they've been decimated, you know, Pakistan's being decimated diplomatically. Juvenile Narasimha Rao, the question that Rajdeep had posed to you just a short while back, what's the template on engagement with Pakistan? Will there be clarity in the manner in which, you know, the BJP government, the NDA government will deal with Pakistan? Will Prime Minister Narendra Modi go for SARC in November?
Gaurav, I think you can make possibly some intelligent guesses, but certainly the kind of relationship we have with Pakistan, the kind of exchanges that we have had with them at the foreign secretary levels, I think that should really give you a good indication as to how things are likely to move in the coming months and coming years, and also the manner in which Afghanistan, Bangladesh, even Iran, how all the neighbors of Pakistan have been actually calling it a state sponsoring terror, and the kind of success we have had within this region should tell us we will not do anything that will give even a bit of legitimacy to Pakistan. The idea is to help Pakistan hammer it from all sides, and this has been a very successful strategy. I don't see why we should be giving them any credibility or legitimacy at a stage when they themselves feel completely marginalized. And
Okay.
that's the kind of a helpless state of mind that Mr. Sharif seems to have actually come to this meeting or before delivering this speech. And
Prerna,
also,
is
I think the fact
Pakistan-
that he spoke to the army chief of Pakistan,
Yes.
and this has become, just one sentence,
Yes.
how this has become public knowledge, that shows Nawaz Sharif's position in the power structure in Pakistan, and that he spoke to him, he discussed with him what to speak at UN General Assembly. This is the worst kind of advertisement for Pakistan and its Prime Minister on the international stage.
Okay, Prerna, is that what's also happening on ground, apart from a very, very aggressive Afghanistan, a very aggressive India. That's the situation that's likely to be on the 26th. There's also the Baluchis, the Sindhis, people from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, women from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, all protesting against Pakistan. How big are these protests on ground in New York, outside the UNGA?
Well, it was an absolute visual of hypocrisy that is being going on vis-a-vis, crimes that have been committed within Pakistan. As Nawaz Sharif was speaking inside the UNGA, outside the Balochi nationals were protesting just outside the UN. And we had spoken to them earlier as well in the day, and their stand is very clear that Pakistan has illegally occupied Balochistan, and they need to be free, and they need to form a separate state of their own. There have been mass murders, there are mass graves that have been discovered in Balochistan, and these are issues that have kind of been under the pushed under the carpet, and only recently that these issues have really come up to the fore, and probably the first time that the Baloch issue is even being discussed in United Nations. So there is pressure really building up from every single quarter for Pakistan, and what you saw today, Nawaz Sharif trying to reflect that blame on India, was just a response to what has been happening.
Okay. And Ambassador Parthasarathy, how do you see this? I believe this is the first time ever that Afghanistan has hit out at Pakistan at the United Nations General Assembly, talking about where are Taliban commanders living. The attack on the American University in Kabul was planned in Pakistan. Has Pakistan seen this kind of an attack before?
No, this is what has unnerved them. The fact of the matter is, we are still to wait to what Bangladesh is going to say.
Okay.
So they will get it from Bangladesh also. So I think the fact is, as I go back to my fundamental thing, if you are going to knock them very hard on SARC, now is the time. There is, as they say, there's a tide in the affairs of men,
Yes.
You take it now, or you're going to miss it for a very long time.
Okay.
Because right now, you have an alternative to SARC, which will be a dynamic organization. You have presented that dynamic organization to the leaders of BRICS, which includes China. In effect, by doing that, you're also telling China, you're not a part of this. We are bringing them.
Yes. So,
and Pakistan has been trying to get China into SARC. So I think keep Pakistan aside.
Okay.
Let them cool their heels for some time, because diplomatically that has
you've
to be
been
done.
ambassador, you've been, India's High Commissioner to Pakistan. Will Pakistan come around, or will, we see perhaps a couple of years of Pakistan saying peace till the time it regroups, rearms, strengthens its terrorists once again, and after 3 years another 26/11?
Let me be very blunt on this. They are having serious problems in 3 provinces. The military is deployed on 3 provinces. As Sharif himself said, 200,000 of them are fighting their own Pashtuns.
Yes.
Well, if Afghanistan and India cannot build on that, then we should give up diplomacy.
207,000 to be precise.
And
207,000.
And 800,000 refugees.
Yes.
In their own homes,
Yes.
who've been driven out by aerial bombardment and artillery shelling.
From the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa area, and they're unable to return to their
They
homes.
can't return. So I think I think Sharif realizes that, and what is going to happen is Rahil Sharif may leave as a hero,
Okay.
but when the blowback comes of his Zarb-e-Azab,
Yes.
the army is going to feel the heat.
And that is something that Pakistan should beware of. But G.V.L. Narasimha Rao, Ambassador Parthasarathy says, does India have it in it for that last mile? Cut Pakistan out, a new template, BIMSTEC, BRICS, that's the new regional alignment. Is this a long-term policy for government of India? Cut Pakistan, cut terrorists out, and cut them out completely, irrespective of what apologists may say.
No, Gaurav, I think certainly, as I understand, the attempt is not only diplomatically isolate Pakistan, also economically squeeze Pakistan, and also try and build pressure on the terror infrastructure that exists on the soil, and tell the whole world that this is the kind of a risk that is emanating to the entire world. The terror threat emanating to the entire world is coming from there. I think actions have been happening on all these fronts, and they have really proved to be extremely successful, and it's a strategy that has borne fruit. And Pakistan is literally, I think when the Prime Minister made that statement on Baluchistan, you have to see the kind of statements that Pakistani guests make on your television channels. I have not seen any of them in the last month or so after the Independence Day speech. They have never been the same people that spoke on Indian television earlier.
Okay.
The pressure is clearly showing on Pakistan.
But he's now trying to mount counter pressure.
Their internal turmoil.
The internal turmoil, but he's trying to mount counter pressure, because I want all our guests to listen in to this point that he raised when he talked about the United Nations independently investigating developments in Jammu and Kashmir, and the fact that he's saying that he has a dossier, Pakistan has a dossier that they want to submit to the UN Secretary General. Let's listen in to Nawaz Sharif before I get you more on the story.
Confrontation should not be our destiny in South Asia. Pakistan wants peace with India. We have gone the extra mile to achieve this, repeatedly offering a dialogue to address all outstanding issues. But India has posed unacceptable preconditions to engage in a dialogue. Let us be clear. Talks are no favor to Pakistan. Talks are in the interest of both countries. They are essential to resolve our differences, especially in Jammu and Kashmir dispute, and to avert the danger of any escalation.
India has hit back at Pakistan. Vikas Swarup, spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, he says the only condition India has for Pakistan is stop terror. Is that too much for Pakistan to accept, for talks to resume? Stop terror, we shall talk. Why is that so difficult for Pakistan? The whole world, Burhani Wani was a terrorist, an armed terrorist of the Hizbul Mujahideen terrorist organization, and that's a banned terrorist organization. But for Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, he was a young Kashmiri leader. That tells you how committed Pakistan is to combating terror. But that's one part of the story. A state sponsor of terror says that the United Nations should send an independent fact-finding body into India to investigate what happened in Jammu and Kashmir, and that Pakistan will give a dossier to the United Nations Secretary General. Let's listen in to the Kashmir rant of Nawaz Sharif.
We demand the immediate release of all Kashmiri political prisoners, an end to the curfew, freedom for the Kashmiris to demonstrate peacefully, urgent medical help for the injured, and abrogation of India's draconian laws. Mr. President, the Security Council has called for the exercise of the right to self-determination by the people of Jammu and Kashmir through a free and fair plebiscite held under United Nations auspices. The people of Kashmir have waited 70 years for implementation of this promise.
General Raj Qadian, what do you make of this Kashmir rant of Nawaz Sharif when he talks about a dossier being presented to UN Secretary General and an independent fact-finding body coming into J&K, a UN body?
Nothing new in what Mr. Nawaz Sharif said. The world has heard it many times over. That is why the Secretary General didn't even mention the subject of Kashmir in his remarks. I think the only good part of Nawaz Sharif's speech was that it wasn't long. That is all I will say. All other points I think Ambassador Partha Sarathy is very succinctly covered. There is nothing new that he said. It was expected that he'll speak about Kashmir. Let us wait for our Foreign Minister what she has to say to rebut it.
Yes.
One has no doubt what she will say, but she being an extremely good orator, she will effectively counter. But what Nawaz Sharif said, it was expected that he'll talk about Kashmir. It is slightly strange for him to say that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. Pakistan is a sponsor of terrorism.
Oh,
if some of them
absolutely.
who are bad terrorists for them are hitting them, it is their own fault.
Absolutely, and Ambassador Partha Sarathy, how will UN, because you've served so extensively as a diplomat for decades, How will the UN look at this speech? How will the world respond to this?
He said one thing which is factually correct.
Okay.
That he's waited 70 years for implementation of those resolutions. Those resolutions couldn't be implemented because the first condition was to withdraw Pakistani troops.
Yes.
And those raiders they sent in. It was Pakistan who made those resolutions unimplementable, and we moved to Simla.
Yes.
So I think he needs a bit of history lessons also.
Okay. So this was just, you know, his rant only to satisfy himself, satisfy Pakistan army.
No, you're wrong. His main point was to satisfy General Rahil Sharif so that he can keep his job.
Will he keep his job?
Let's wait and see.
In your appreciation?
I can't have an appreciation at this stage.
Okay.
After midnight.
Okay. GVL Narasimha Rao, the way we see the government try and corner Pakistan, it's given the army a free hand in Jammu and Kashmir. It's cornering Pakistan diplomatically, economically. But will the government declare Pakistan a state sponsor of terror? Now, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, independent MP, he's saying he's going to move a private member's bill. Is that possible, GVL Narasimha Rao?
No, Gaurav, I think I would not really wish to comment on what else possibly is under consideration or will come under the consideration of the government in future. But the intent and the kind of actions that have been taken over the past few months would suggest that the idea is to isolate Pakistan and build
no, but
pressure
shouldn't
on
the government be taking independent steps?
Consensus
like withdraw
Pakistan,
most favored nation status? Ambassador Parthasarathy, is that doable?
No, I think let's go step by step.
No,
let's go step by step.
Okay, GVL, yeah, go on GVL Narasimha Rao.
I think Ms. Parthasarathy could add, but I would only say the attempt is to even economically squeeze Pakistan. So whatever needs to be done, I think all that will be under the possible list of items under consideration. What all actual actions will be taken in the coming weeks and months, I think that's for the government to take a very conscious decision. But having achieved success with all its goals, in terms of diplomatic goals, I think more actions certainly will follow. And Pakistan is already feeling the heat, feeling isolated and unable to really get its act together.
Okay.
All that we need to do,
yes,
amidst this operation Zarb-e-Azab, where so many Pashtuns have died,
yes,
if we are really serious, we should declare the Durand line a disputed border, and to say that is an issue for the Pashtuns to resolve according to their sentiments.
How will that help?
How will that
explain
help?
to our viewers.
What it will help is that for very long the Pashtuns have felt that that border was drawn by the British. It left Pashtuns half on one side and
yes,
half on the other side.
Yes.
And don't forget, Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan refused to be buried in Pakistan.
Yes.
He said, I do not recognize that border, I have to be buried in Jalalabad.
Yes.
So there are very strong Pashtun sentiments, and Pakistan should learn that, you know, there's also the question of the right of Pashtuns.
Okay.
So I think you can turn politically the squeeze on them internally like you've done in Balochistan.
Okay, if India has the stomach for it, and GVL Narasimha Rao can tell us more about it, that is this just a temporary phase because there's so much anger across the country, or does India actually have the stomach to hit Pakistan where it hurts and win a war without committing combatants to it? But I want to go through India's responses. Ambassador Parthasarathy, GVL Narasimha Rao, General Qadian and Prerana. India has started responding. Vikas Swarup, spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, he says, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, Pakistan's Prime Minister at UNGA says, Uri attack, he's in complete denial of Uri attack. 19 infiltration attempts across the LOC that was stopped this year. Is this indigenous? Spot on there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Pak PM Nawaz Sharif at UNGA glorifies Hizbul terrorist Burhani Wani at UN's highest forum. Pakistan's continued attachment to terrorism. General Raj Qadian, we've discussed this. You can't call a terrorist a freedom fighter or a political leader.
Absolutely not, Gaurav. He was a terrorist. He was a leader of the Hizbul Mujahideen, which is a banned organization, headquartered in POK. There was no doubt he was a terrorist and he was rightly killed.
Okay. Prerna, Ambassador Partha Sarthi was discussing the Pashtun issue, the Baluch issue. Is this just a television debate the way Pakistani media is portraying it to be, that 10 people or 15 people assemble, whether in Munich or in Berlin or perhaps even outside the United Nations General Assembly, or does Pakistan have reason to be rattled?
Well, it's maybe a handful of people in Munich and in, Berlin and in New York, but you have to understand these people came from all over. The protests that are happening here, the protesters came from, Ontario, Canada. So the people, this issue is clearly a Baloch, the people from Balochistan have got right now is a platform, a global spotlight that was given to them when Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke about the issue, from the ramparts of the Red Fort. So what they have right now is a platform on which they can stand and raise their voice, which hitherto they did not have. Nobody knew about this conflict, no matter how much they talked about. But right now, they're making sure of this global spotlight that they have. They're making sure that they make good use of it. So you never know how this, this whole situation pans out really. But at this point in time, it is a serious issue, and this is something that Pakistan will have to, really think about, especially when it constantly brings up Kashmir when it comes to India.
Okay, I have to slip into a quick break here. Prerna, stay with me. I'll be back in less than a minute. Stay with me. How many people were actually India has hit back at Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's speech, his rant, his Kashmir rant at the United Nations General Assembly. India said the fact that Pakistan is calling a terrorist, an armed terrorist, Burhani Wani, as a young leader goes on to show how attached Pakistan is to terrorists and the cause of terrorism. Lots more. But before that, before we move on, let's just for a moment listen in to independent MP Rajiv Chandrasekhar, who said he's going to move a private member's bill so that India can declare Pakistan a state sponsor of terror. Let's listen in. Declare Pakistan a state sponsor of terror. It's not just two US congressmen. In India, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, independent MP from Bangalore, is moving a private member's bill in Parliament. He joins us on the broadcast, sir. Welcome on the show. That's a great initiative. Tell us, why are you taking it?
I think we have now reached a point in our history as a nation where we have to rewrite the rules of the game about Pakistan. For too many years now, we have been, in a sense, too politically correct about how to handle Pakistan. We have been engaged and we have been engaged and we have been engaged. After Uri, the sum of all of what has happened in the last decade, Mumbai, Pathankot, Uri, and several other terrorist incidents, while we as a nation are going out and asking the world to declare Pakistan a terror state, to recognize and declare Pakistan as a terror state, I think it's time we did it as well. Okay. We have to recalibrate our relationship between Pakistan and India as one of a terror state and a country that is calling the terror state as is. Okay.
Now, is this more effective if a private member, you're a lawmaker, you're well within your rights to do it, sir, and it's an outstanding step, but should you be doing it or should government of India be doing it?
So I will do what powers, I will use the powers that I have as MP, which is use a private member's bill. But I have also written this morning to the Prime Minister and urged him and his government to take the same step to declare Pakistan a terror state. And all of the steps that implies, including cancelling and repealing the MFN status that this country has given Pakistan in 1996, which Pakistan did not reciprocate till date. We must repeal the MFN status. We must use the economic tools that we have, including an embargo on travel between the two nations. Okay. We must cancel visas and passports. We must use the power that we have economically whilst we explore the options militarily and diplomatically.
Juvenile Narasimha Rao, is the government willing to take at least some of these hard steps? For example, let's begin with step one, most favored nation status to Pakistan. Is the Narendra Modi government willing to withdraw it?
No, Gaurav, I made it clear to you earlier, I'm not in a position to give any a specific kind of actions that will follow in the coming weeks. I think one will have to wait and see. A whole range of measures are under consideration, but certainly that's not a matter for neither I am privy to those details, nor is it a matter for public discussion and debate as of yet. But certainly the government is considering entire full gamut of measures available to ensure that Pakistan behaves and Pakistan delivers on the promises that it has made, and it will be made to pay. So certainly, but what exactly will that constitute? I think I'm not in a position to really speculate. And I think I don't think even advisable to do so as of now.
Okay, but General, if you were to war game it, because it has to be a comprehensive national response. The army is one part of it. Military response is one part of it. But if it has to be a comprehensive national response, withdrawing MFN status or declaring Pakistan a state sponsor of terror, will that help? Will that help the larger cause of stopping Pakistan terror?
In one way, I think Mr. Chandrasekhar is absolutely right that if we are expecting the world to declare Pakistan a terror state, then we must start within ourselves. India must be the initiator of it. I don't really know what is the implication of a country being declared a terror state. Will it also impose some sanctions? If it does, then it is meaningful. Otherwise, just a bit of a psychological effect, there is a terror state. But yes, if other countries stop doing trade with them, if there is restriction of international flights, some kind of curtailing of Pakistani visas who want to go abroad, then it is more meaningful. Your second part of the question you asked, Narasimha Rao, I think when you have already decided that we are not going to speak to Pakistan, and we have now accepted that Pakistan has no interest in shaking hands with us and talking to us on a subject of peace, then all these methods, combination, diplomacy we are already doing, political, economic, psychological, social and military must be adopted, and I presume the government would be examining all these options.
In a while from now, we are just getting a reaction from MJ Akbar, Minister of State for External Affairs. I quickly want to cut across to the United States of America. Let's listen into Syed Akbaruddin.
Time out from a busy schedule to come here. Our idea today is to just respond for your convenience to some of those, to the statement that we've heard in the UN General Assembly right now. Of course, a formal right of reply, as is usual, will be made at the end of the day's proceedings. Given your timelines and your convenience, I do understand that you will require a much more swift response. So we've requested the Minister of State, MJ Akbar, who is here, to provide a few thoughts which come to mind right away based on that statement. However, at the end of the day, we will give you a formal response that is being provided to the United Nations in the General Assembly Hall. With those introductory comments, I'll ask the Minister of State to make his brief remarks.
Pakistan at the moment seems to be run by a war machine rather than a government. Pakistan wants dialogue while holding a gun in its hand, a terrorist gun in its hand. Talks and guns don't go together. Our position on a dialogue has been consistent. We have always been ready for a dialogue, but we will not succumb to the blackmail tactics of a government in Islamabad that seems eager to use terrorism and terrorism as policy. We heard the glorification of a terrorist. Burhani Wani is a self-declared commander of the Hizbul Mujahideen. This organization is widely acknowledged as a terrorist group, internationally acknowledged as a terrorist group. It was shocking that a leader of a nation can glorify a self-declared, a self-advertised terrorist at such a forum. This is self-incrimination by the Pakistan Prime Minister. We have just heard a speech full of threat, bluster, and I'm afraid what can only be described as rising immaturity and complete disregard of facts. The only occupation in Jammu and Kashmir, which is a part of India, is the occupation of a part of Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistan's occupation army. The world also knows that Pakistan has indulged in ethnic cleansing within its own people. Pakistan's consistent use of war and terrorism has been, alas, at the cost of development of the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan are paying the price of a malevolent policy.
Yeah, just two questions because we have to leave.
Abhishek from Times Now. Sir, Nawaz Sharif in his speech also said that Pakistan is ready to go the extra mile, has always gone the extra mile. Which extra mile you think the Pakistani Prime Minister was talking about? For peace.
We haven't seen the first mile. Where is the question of the extra mile?
Yes, last question. Okay.
Saluja, the Indian panorama. So the policy of India towards Pakistan has been rather unclear for the last couple of years. Do you think India is now resolved to take a firm stand against Pakistan, notwithstanding whatever Pakistan has been doing and saying all over?
Our Prime Minister's attitude and policy to Pakistan has been consistent from day one. From day one. In the very first invitation that was extended to the SAARC leaders, it was made clear that India was always ready for dialogue with anyone, but not if there was any use of terrorism. You will recall even in the first weeks, the dialogue process was disrupted because India's stand has been unfavoring and changing. You can see in our relationship with other countries which have, where the dialogue process has taken amity and friendship far, very far.
It has.
It has.
Are we ready for
Yeah, please, yes. No.
Sir, the Pakistani Prime Minister is going to submit a supposed dossier to the United Nations Secretary General, and Nawaz Sharif has made possibly the most massive lobbying effort trying to convert the global community to mediate on Kashmir dispute. Can you talk from India's stance how these countries, the world superpowers, the P5 have reacted to us and what they are saying on India's position?
Well, it's a very simple response. I mean, I hope you have heard all the other speeches. Nobody else has referred to this.
Yes, last question, yes.
Hi sir, this is Ashok from ANI. Sir, your quote, we need your comment on Balochistan because the Balochistan people are protesting in front of UN headquarters. Any comment on it?
Well, the Balochistan people have reasons for protest against a policy of serious violence against the people, which has a very long history It is a violence that has included the use of air force, the use of massive armed forces against them. But the best, I think you will have to go and talk to them to find out the full truth.
Thank you very much. With that, we end this. Thank you.
So that was Minister of State for External Affairs MJ Akbar hitting back at Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. And look at the aspects that MJ Akbar raised. Burhani Wani, a terrorist, a self-declared terrorist of a terrorist organization like Hizbul Mujahideen. And it's not just India, it's the United States, it's the United Nations, it's the European Union. Hizbul Mujahideen is a terrorist organization for the world, and Prime Minister of Pakistan calls a Hizbul Mujahideen terrorist a young leader. MJ Akbar hit out at Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He said Pakistan is run by a war machine rather than by a government. Burhani Wani was a self-declared commander of the Hizbul Mujahideen, and this was acknowledged. The fact that he was acknowledged internationally by a leader of a country goes on to show that how can they glorify terrorism. Heard of speech which was full of threat, full of bluster and complete disregard of facts. Only occupation of Jammu and Kashmir, as MJ Akbar said, was Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And MJ Akbar is just giving the first reaction. Minister of State for External Affairs. India's counter charge will be led by Sushma Swaraj, External Affairs Minister, on the 26th of September. Now, all of her speech is not just a response to Pakistan. That will form one part of it. The big part of her speech is India's worldview, what India expects the United Nations to do to benefit the world. And I want to bring in Juvenile Narasimha Rao of the BJP and General Raj Kadian. General, to you first, what do you make of MJ Akbar's response?
I think he has touched upon the crunch points. 3-4 of them, you also summed them up. Firstly, for a leader of a country to glorify a known terrorist and also a known murderer,
yes,
as a young leader, I think is demeaning himself. Number two, he clarified that India is always willing to talk, but not under the shadow of the gun. India has always extended her hand. In fact, the present Prime Minister, ever since he came to power, right from first day, as MJ Akbar also pointed out, till the Uri attack, we were willing to talk to them, despite all their perfidies. But I think Uri has been a breaking point. The patience is lost now. And third thing he mentioned about Pakistani use of air power against their own countrymen who are fighting for freedom. So I don't think Nawaz Sharif has any moral right to give a lecture to India when in his own backyard he is doing exactly what he is accusing India of.
And worse, and much worse.
If anything, we need to talk on...
Yes, yes. Juvenile Narasimha Rao,
yeah,
the
what
point...
I was saying was that other... Yeah.
Give me a minute, General. Juvenile Narasimha Rao, after 26/11, everyone said this is the last, straw that broke the camel's back. After this, relationship with Pakistan will never be the same again. And yet we saw engagement with Pakistan without Pakistan addressing our core issues. Now, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took over, just soon after he took over, there was an attack at the Indian consulate in Herat. Then there was an attack at Gurdaspur, then at Udhampur, then at Pathankot, then at Uri. Now, is this the final straw that broke the camel's back, or will we once again, the moment the outrage is over, we'll see the relationship go back to engaging with Pakistan and hoping for a brighter future because you can't change your neighbors, so you must engage with them?
No, Gaurav, I think even much before Uri happened, I think our policy has already been unveiled, where the pressure was already building up on Pakistan. In a sense, Uri itself is an attempt by a frustrated Pakistan, an act which was carried out in desperation. and which has actually isolated Pakistan much more. The extent of isolation has actually grown because of Pakistan's acts of omission and commission. And Uri has only convinced even countries which have possibly not personally, not accused Pakistan by name. I think Pakistan's means now have actually become their own, means have actually started targeting them, means have ensured that they could not achieve the ends they wanted to really achieve. What happened to 22 MPs that Nawaz Sharif sent to all the global capitals 2 months ago?
Yes.
What has happened to their attempts to go to UN and raise Kashmir as an issue? Not a single country has raised Kashmir issue in the last few days.
Yes.
At the UN Assembly, General Assembly. Because Pakistan has lost all credibility, and today by glorifying a terrorist, I think Pakistan has only again advertised to the whole world that they are backing terrorists of the banned organizations internationally. So I think this one-liner from MJ actually is actually very, it sums it up all. Actually, Nawaz Sharif has self-incriminated himself and his country as a terror-sponsoring organization.
Yes.
by talking about Burhani Wani and saying that we stand for the fight by people like Burhani Wani. So he's actually siding with terrorists.
Which he appears to be doing. MJ Akbar hit back and hard. Now we will listen to MJ Akbar. MJ Akbar hitting back measure for measure. Nawaz Sharif raised several points. One of the key points he raised was Burhani Wani, a Hizbul Mujahideen terrorist. He called him a young Kashmir leader, a young leader in Kashmir. He talked about human rights violations, alleged human rights violations in Kashmir. MJ Akbar hit back. I want to listen into what MJ Akbar said before I bring our guests in for more on this. Let's quickly listen into MJ Akbar.
Yeah, just 2 questions because we have to leave.
Yeah, Abhishek from Times Now. Sir, Nawaz Sharif in his speech also said that Pakistan is ready to go the extra mile, has always gone the extra mile. Which extra mile you think the Pakistani Prime Minister was talking about? For peace.
We haven't seen the first mile. Where is the question of the extra mile?
Yes, last question. Okay.
The Indian panorama. So the policy of India towards Pakistan has been rather, unclear for the last couple of years. Do you think India is now resolved to take a firm stand against Pakistan, notwithstanding whatever Pakistan has been doing and saying all over?
Our Prime Minister's attitude and policy to Pakistan has been consistent from day one. From day one. In the very first invitation that was extended to the SAARC leaders, it was made clear that India was always ready for dialogue with anyone, but not if there was any use of terrorism. You will recall even in the first weeks, the dialogue process was disrupted because India's stand has been unfavoring and changing. You can see in our relationship with other countries which have, where the dialogue process has taken amity and friendship far, very far.
It has.
It has.
Are we ready for
Yeah, please, yes. No.
So the Pakistani Prime Minister is going to submit a supposed dossier to the United Nations Secretary General, and Nawaz Sharif has made possibly the most massive lobbying effort trying to convert the global community to mediate on Kashmir dispute. Can you talk from India's stance how these countries, the world superpowers, the P5 have reacted to us and what they are saying on India's position?
Well, it's a very simple response. I mean, I hope you have heard all the other speeches. Nobody else has referred to this.
Yes, last question, yes.
Hi sir, this is Ashok from ANI. Sir, your quote, we need your comment on Balochistan because the Balochistan people are protesting in front of UN headquarters. Can you comment on it?
Well, the Balochistan people have reasons for protest against a policy of serious violence against the people, which has a very long history. It is a violence that has included the use of air force, massive, the use of massive armed forces against them. But the best, I think you will have to go and talk to them to find out the full truth.
Thank you very much. With that, we end this. Thank you.
General Qadian, closing comments from you when we talk about Pakistan's Prime Minister, not just raise the issue of Burhani Wani, that may be, one part of the story, but the fact that he wants the UN to send an independent fact-finding body into Jammu and Kashmir, the fact that he wants to present a dossier to the UN Secretary General, what is his bigger game plan? What's he driving at?
Gaurav, firstly, I think Nawaz Sharif has done India a great favor by bringing in the name of Burhani Wani. It will make India's task much easier to tell the world, to convince the world that Pakistan loves terrorism. This example is good enough. Number two, you said that bringing in a fact-finding mission. Ban Ki-moon some weeks ago had made a statement when he was asked a question about the situation in Kashmir. He said the United Nations Charter is only to monitor the ceasefire line and not to interfere with what is happening inside. I think that answer is good enough. That is the same answer Nawaz Sharif will get now. The United Nations has no role to play. When we accepted this United Nations resolution in 48, there were two preconditions. Number one, Pakistan must move out all its security forces. Number two, Pakistan must move out all the non-Kashmiris. These two preconditions were not met by Pakistan.
Yes.
So now to harp on why the plebiscite is taking place when they changed the entire demography of P&K, it has no relevance anymore.
Okay.
And the UN recognizes, as I mentioned, the Secretary General clarified that we have nothing to do inside. We are only worried about the ceasefire line.
Yeah. Okay. So how should India be responding to Pakistan's repeated attempts? One, we need to strengthen ourselves. What happened at Uri is unpardonable. I mean, you're a commander. You've been a commander on ground yourself, General. What happened in Uri? Militarily unpardonable. That terrorists could cause the kind of destruction they did. But how should the Indian Army respond to that?
Yes, the destruction, of course, part of it because the diesel caught fire. There may have been some security lapses that the army will investigate and apply the right correctives. But then I will raise this point that just because we were lax, it does not give the Pakistanis a license to attack. It is like a thief trying to plead innocence because the neighbor's house where he targeted was unlocked. That is no logic. Whether we keep ourselves locked or unlocked, it is nothing to do with Pakistan getting a liberty to attack. Yes, it was a serious attack. We lost 19 men. The fires on their funerals are still hot. The ashes are hot. The entire country is looking for punishment to Pakistan, not so much to the terrorists, because terrorists are only the actors.
Yes.
And let me remind you, Gaurav, that public pressure is a very great factor. Let's go back to 1999 when Flight 814 was hijacked to Kandahar.
No, but how should the army respond, General? How should the army respond? Because the government has said it is for the army to respond at a place and time of their choosing. It happened to the army should avenge it, the army knows how to do it. Whatever you can tell our people safely, how should the
I have said army should hit Pakistan, don't go for terrorist attacks. Army should prefer to hit them from remaining this side of the LOC. We have the means, we have the method. Don't forget, we are a 14 lakhs army. We are spending 250,000 crore rupees of the national budget. We owe it to the country to come up to the country's expectation and hit them we must. And the earlier we do, the better to assuage the public anger. Now the government has given the go-ahead. I am sure the army is very actively examining the options. They may be waiting for this UN General Assembly to be over or whatever. The government will finally give them the go-ahead also, but they have already given the liberty. And army must do its part now.
Okay, and we will continue to track developments on that story. General Raj Qadian, former Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, many thanks for joining me here on this big India Today discussion on Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's Kashmir rant, a complete disaster for Pakistan.